This is Popping the Bubble with hosts Sandra Ponce de Leon and Pete A. Turner.
Hi, this is Sara Kunst, founder and CEO of Proday, and you're listening to Popping the Bubble.
Hi, Sara. Well, we are so excited to have you. Sara, just looking at your background, it is so impressive. You're not only the founder and CEO of Proday, you've actually already had a very healthy career in venture funding, being a VC. You've worked with Marie Claire, and were also named in Forbes 30 Under 30 as an award winner there in 2015. So you've really accomplished so much, and so it's really awesome to have you here to talk about a little bit about your journey.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
So maybe we could just start there. How did you get to where you are now? How did you get into venture funding, and how did that lead you to become a founder?
You know, I ended up in venture capital sort of accidentally, which is the way that a lot of people, I think, end up in the role. I had started out actually in marketing. I had worked for Apple and Red Bull and Chanel. So I was doing marketing for really big brands. Working for Apple especially really opened my eyes. I'd always grown up, coding and loving technology, but I knew that I didn't want to be an engineer. And so I kind of thought, there aren't jobs for me in technology. And then once I worked for Apple doing marketing, I realized that I actually could combine my love of technology and innovation with my love of marketing and business development and making money. And so from there, I went into the startup world. Worked for media startups on the revenue side, so figuring out how kind of new media companies, online media companies could make money, and then ended up out in Silicon Valley working for a Y Combinator startup, again on the product and revenue side, figuring out how to make money. Was the first business employee or the first business hire, part of the founding team. And then as that company
What startup was this?
That was a startup called Emporia. And as Emporia was running out of money after a couple years of us working on it, I'd started talking to venture capital investors. One in particular kept having me come back and talk to them more and more. And then finally she said, I really think that you should come work for me. Your startup is unfortunately not going to make it, but you have a really interesting understanding of technology and media and marketing, and we think you'd be a great investor. So I became a venture capital investor completely by accident, and it turned out to be something that I had a lot of passion for. It's really, really fun to help companies grow. It's awesome to be able to work with founders as they struggle through a lot of their early challenges and help them figure out what kind of company they're going to build. So I did venture capital investing for a couple of years, and I loved it, and I still do love it, but I just really had the desire to build something of my own. And I really had the desire to not just be dropping in and helping founders, but to actually do that myself and be able to build a company myself. And so that is what led me to almost a year ago now starting Proday. Proday we're a sports and fitness media company. Our flagship product is our app, which allows you to work out alongside professional athletes. So we sign professional athletes, top NFL players, the MVP of the U.S. women's soccer team, just some really great, amazing athletes that we have and that we're releasing in the coming month. We film their workouts on location and we put them into our app. So then you open up the app, and instead sort of reading through a list of what to do or wandering around the gym, not sure what to do, you have a professional athlete right there with you, encouraging you and helping you get through the workout. And so that has been just a really exciting, cool experience over the past year for us.
And your experience as a venture capitalist and hearing all of these founder stories and struggles must really have helped. Or do you see yourself encountering some of the similar challenges that some of the founders that you were advising along the way encountered, and how has that helped you?
I would say yes and no, right? So certainly, yes, moving through a lot of the same processes, a lot of the same, kind of ups and downs. The nice thing about spending a lot of time with startups before starting your own is that you really do get to learn from other people's mistakes a little bit. And so there are things that, might be top 5 most common startup mistakes that, because I've been working in startups since now like 2009, 2008, I'm able to avoid a little bit because, hopefully if you observe something for 7, 8 years, when it's your turn to actually do it, you can be a little bit smarter. And so that's been really, really awesome. and has definitely helped us grow faster, be more capital efficient, and understand what's important when it comes to building a business. And so, I mean, just in general, I always think that very few people, most people will benefit a lot from working in a field before starting a company in it. And I think that's certainly the case in startups.
Yeah, absolutely. What would you say is the most common mistake that you've been able to avoid after having seen it repeatedly in your journey?
I think a lot of times, especially when you're in Silicon Valley, I'm based in San Francisco, you can get really caught up in focusing on the wrong things. And there's kind of an element of cargo culting where you get so focused on getting to the top of Product Hunt or getting featured in TechCrunch or speaking at a certain conference or getting a certain, into a certain accelerator, getting a certain investor that you forget. And all those things have tremendous value, right? If they come easily or if they make a lot of sense for your company. So if TechCrunch is calling you saying, hey, can we write about you? There's probably no downside. But when you spend weeks and weeks and weeks and months sometimes chasing this like one investor or one feature or whatever, and you're not even really able to explicate or to prove that this is actually going to move the needle for my business, you sort of just want it for bragging rights, right? So you want it to be, I see all the time people who say, I'm only going to apply to Y Combinator. If Y Combinator doesn't want me, then, I'm just not going to do an accelerator. And I say, but why, right? You need money and you want money at a certain valuation. And there are literally hundreds of accelerators who will give you that money at that valuation. And yes, Y Combinator is great, but if they don't want you, let go of your ego for a minute, because a lot of times it has nothing to do with you. They might have 3 other companies in your space that just went through or just not believe in your market, or they might feel like they don't have enough expertise, whatever it is. Instead of being so blind thinking, one deal or one person or one feature never makes or breaks a company, it's just not how startups work. Sometimes you just see founders get so focused on something in their mind as the only way that they get a little bit blinded to everything else around them. So that's probably the thing that being in startups for a while, I've been able to most kind of avoid and have been most grateful that I have been able to avoid that.
And I can definitely relate to that as well. Just having that single focus on having that feature that you have no idea how much pressure I've had to have that happen for a lot of the startups that I've worked for. It's like, when are we going to be in Mashable? When are we going to be in TechCrunch? Well, is that where we're going to find our customers?
Exactly.
So let's talk a little bit about Proday. So I did download the app, and I'm a huge fitness buff, and I love fitness apps in general. What I noticed is that Proday is actually visually so much different than anything that I've seen or was used to. So I guess, how did you come up with the idea for Proday, and how did you come up with the look and feel that's just so different visually than what's in the market now?
Yeah, for us, it was really about a lot of it was driven by what we didn't like. So a lot of it was driven by what works and also what doesn't, right? So a lot of fitness apps, when you open them up, you see just tons and tons and tons of questions you have to answer or things you have to fill out before you can actually get to the workout. Other fitness apps, you have to download every workout individually, or you can't really do anything until you subscribe. And so we just really started out with the question of, we want to work out. What stops us from working out? And then specifically, in what ways do maybe fitness apps stop us from working out? And how can we kind of overcome some of those things to make it more fun and easier to work out? And so that's really where we started from. And that's driven so much of the way that we think about building out the product. And then we made it look different, quite frankly, because we didn't really feel like most fitness apps were that beautiful or interesting. And so we said, you know what, we're going to make this more attractive because we want to look at pretty things, right? So it's pretty simple in that way. We just said, we want to look at pretty things. And it's a really simple idea, but it is sort of revolutionary in a space where everything kind of looks a certain way, and it's really focused on kind of utility or minimalism, or it's sort of busy and ad driven. And we did something very different, and we're really excited about that.
Yeah, it does. It looks great. It's really nice to actually see the athletes, and you can see very well how they are doing every movement. So I think it's from a customer standpoint, a user standpoint, being able to see someone physically, the way that their posture is, the way that they're handling the weights is so important from, a fitness perspective.
The model that you have is fantastic. A lot of startups struggle to, they can gather an audience, but how the heck do they generate revenue? You've got the subscription base, but you're also, if I'm right, you're also paying the athletes something when they come and do the work.
Yep, we do a revenue share. And the reason that we do that is because we think that the athletes are a big reason that users are excited to use our app. And we also think that, they certainly deserve to be compensated for the work that they're putting in. And so for us, we've been able to do that, and it's worked really, really well to be able to say, hey, come do this. We're a startup. We don't have, we're not Pepsi or Nike. We can't pay you a ton of money up front. What we can do is pay you for the revenue you bring in. And that's fair to the athletes. And they like that a lot. And they also think that they like it because all athletes are somewhat competitive. And so for them, it's great to be able to see that they are going to be able to kind of compare themselves to other athletes and figure out the best way to, get money, and they like it, and it makes it fun for them. It's been a business model that's worked really, really well. And I think when you're working with talent, be it celebrity athletes, whomever, you're always going to get a better response when you have a collaborative approach and say, hey, if I make money, you're going to make money too.
I found out about Diamond Dallas Page, the professional wrestler. He made more money on his yoga program that he has than he ever made in wrestling. So if you put a good product together. Diamond Dallas Page is a WWE wrestler, and he was a champion, a well-known guy, was on TV. I mean, a lot of people know this guy's name, so much so they bought his yoga program, and these are dudes he's getting to do yoga. So it's pretty significant. So if you can capture that feeling, I think, this is a great idea. What about someone? A friend of mine was an Olympic caliber gymnast, got hurt basically right before the Olympics happened. Her name's Laura Mitchell. At least it was Laura Mitchell. Can't compete anymore, and also can't work out like she used to work out. Is there going to be some kind of and I imagine you guys are on this already, like, hey, you've got a lower back problem with a hip problem.
Yeah, and it the interesting thing about that is from like a legal standpoint, right, and a liability standpoint, you always kind of say, check with a doctor. But what we find is, and typically this is something if you've ever been injured, you certainly relate to. You are working out, you get an injury, you go to a physical therapist, and then they tell you a bunch of things, and you're like, hey, if I'd known these things before, I wouldn't have gotten injured. The cool things that we can do is we can provide some of that insight. We can provide some of that basic tips, right? Even just small, obvious things like stretching. It's really easy when you're running late and you want to get in a workout quickly to not put the time into stretching. And you don't think about the fact that you haven't worked out in a week and you've been on a couple planes and it's cold out, so your muscles are just obscenely stiff, and you end up pulling a muscle or really injuring yourself for no other reason than you thought you didn't have 2 minutes to warm up, right? So we can definitely put those things in there. And a lot of them are really kind of basic block and tackling, right? If you're doing weightlifting, make sure that you are increasing the weight slowly and that you're not overexerting yourself because you're excited to get to, that next 100-pound mark or whatever. If that you have your shoes laced up tight so you have a lot of ankle stability, just really basic things like that are so easy to forget. And then you get hurt. And then once you get hurt, it's a really long road back. And for most of us, it's super demoralizing to be like, well, I was all, fired up to be working out this month, and now I'm hurt and I feel lazy and tired and I don't want to do it.
I think we can all empathize with that feeling.
No kidding. I don't got time to stretch.
And so who are some of the, more popular athletes that you've got on the platform?
We're in the very early days. And our big kind of marquee athlete, we just launched actually this summer, so a few weeks ago.
Congrats.
And our big marquee athlete for the summer, thank you, has been Delanie Walker. Sure. He's a Pro Bowl NFL player, tight end, has been in the Pro Bowl, a Walter Payton Man of the Year award nominee. So just a really, really solid athlete, both on and off the field. And he's also, speaking of solid, the guy's 6 feet tall, 264 pounds and 8% body fat. So his biceps are like literally like the size of a basketball. He's just a super kind of freak of nature level athlete because he's so muscular, so fast, so flexible. And so we were really, really excited to have him as our launch athlete because you look at him and you're like, okay, whatever he's doing, I will do it too because this guy knows how to
who's a
work out.
Stretch athlete that you're hoping to get sometime in the future? Who do you got your eye on?
Yeah, the interesting thing is that the world of sports, the world of athletics is a small world, right? So as you move through, a lot of it really comes down to reputation, and I think that that's true in any sport or in any field. Certainly, it's true in technology, and I think it's true in business more generally. But sports almost more than anything, because a lot of times these athletes, they don't have time, right? They have a full-time job that pays them very well. They don't have time to go out and research every new technology, every new industry, every new offer coming their way. They have agents who try to do that, but the agents have the same time constraints. So one of the biggest things I've found and getting indoors with, getting in front of the biggest name athletes in the planet is really your reputation and who you know, and more importantly, what they'll say about you behind your back, right? And it better be good. So for us, we've been lucky to, obviously we're very new. We have a long way to go before we conquer the world, but we've been really lucky because the LA Dodgers were early investors and they believed in us very early on. That's made a huge difference. And some of our advisors who are partners at some of the big talent agencies have been very supportive. I was taking a shower a couple months ago and the phone rang and it was Beverly Hills and I just had a feeling I needed to answer it. So I'm standing there, literally like turn the shower off, standing in the shower on my phone, and it's the Rock's agent, right? And he's like, "Oh, hey, just wanted to hear a little bit more about this." Those deals are very long, right? They'll take years if they happen at all. But it's awesome that you can even get somebody of that caliber to give you a phone call, and it's 100% based on the relationships. This is before we even launch. So those are the types of things that are so important. And I don't have a lot of experience in the sports world, but what I did have a lot of experience in was the tech world. I also just had a long track record of being a smart person who's a good person, who is helpful. And so when I called people asking for them to help me or asking for favors, they're willing to do them. And that makes a huge difference.
You also got with a great partner too. The Dodgers have been known since the 90s that they were ahead of the game on technology and integration, all these kinds of things. They had the model website before MLB.com even had a website. So you're with a great partner that recognizes what the future looks like. And that's, again, another hallmark that you're on the right path. If I was going to do a local plug for an athlete, we have just down the road, Johnny Mosley, Olympic gold medalist, freestyle skier. He did Battle of the Network Stars kind of show, but with the athletes, and he had all these like super fit NFL dudes, and he just kind of had a Hawaiian shirt on and a bucket hat, and he's like, "Yeah, run 400 meters, okay." And he did, and he just destroyed everybody. Like, shoot baskets, I'm just gonna stand under the basket and make 100 1-point baskets. You guys can go shoot threes. I'm just gonna stand here, not get tired. It was hilarious. So he's a fantastic world class athlete. I would love to see him get his shot. So I'm gonna tweet that out.
Exactly. And that's the cool thing is because we don't work with just one sport, right? We work with a ton. We look at all those ones. We have kind of this massive master calendar of the different sports seasons. And so right now we're actually talking to some of our friends at the U.S. Ski and Snowboarding Association to make sure that we're getting in touch with the right winter sports people, because they're this is their time off. And then August, September, they start saying, okay, the snow starts coming in, got to get up and got to start training for season again. We're always looking at that. We look at a huge range. We look at everybody from UFC and WWE stars. We're announcing soon a big name athlete who's actually a dancer and have a really great range of sports. And the reason for that is that, we don't think that people want to just look like one kind of athlete, or just Americans in particular, and that's our main focus, although we do have an international presence. Americans, they want to work out with them. And there's also just a lot of cool athletes from a bunch of different sports who maybe aren't on your TV screen any given Sunday, but they're people like Johnny Mosley that you're excited about, and want to get to know better.
And I think the really cool part for the athletes is that beyond just, being an additional revenue stream for them, it's also a way for them to connect with their audiences and their fans in a new way. So absolutely. Is that also part of the sales pitch when you're going out to these athletes?
Yeah, I mean, for them, right, you're an athlete and you're driven to win, you're driven by your stats, but you also, over time, are building. For most athletes, you're building a relationship with your fans and your followers. And, you have people who, I'm in San Francisco, so I'm a big Draymond Green fan, but I'm also a big Draymond Green fan because I went to Michigan State, right? And he was a couple years younger than me, but, we have mutual friends, and I went to high school about 45 minutes away from where he went to high school. So literally, that for me is a fan relationship that stretches back years. And no matter if I leave the Bay Area or if he ever does, right, that connection, that fan interest stays there. And athletes know that, and they really want to find ways to get close to their fans, to intercept them in a way that's not just, hey, pick me for your, fantasy sports draft.
Right. The extension of that is obviously into the celebrity world. Is that something that you're thinking about as well?
For us, we definitely look at celebrity. We're not opposed. For us, it's again, to go back to The Rock, right? Somebody like that who is, or there's a few celebrity names who, even though they may not wear a jersey and have the stamina and the body of an athlete, right? So somebody like a Jennifer Lopez, who, even though she's not, a full-time professional dancer anymore, you certainly can't tell it from looking at her.
I definitely need her workout.
Like The Rock. Exactly. Yeah. And so, with those kinds of people, we're always open. I've been following personally Khloe Kardashian over the past couple years. She makes getting divorced from a drug addict look like the best decision ever, because she's just completely transformed her body, and it's really inspiring. So, we do look at those things, and we're certainly always open to having those conversations.
I know you're very involved in a lot of different causes, and one of the causes that I was particularly curious about is Venture for America. So maybe you can talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, Venture for America, I'm on the investor board there. It's a really cool organization. Andrew Yang started it with the idea, seeing what Teach for America had worked with their program, and he really loved the passion for these young grads had to go into these smaller towns, kind of make a difference outside of the kind of consulting gigs, banking gigs otherwise they would be looking at. Teaching somebody how to be a teacher is amazing. It's not super entrepreneurial. And one of the biggest problems in America is, the decline, great jobs for people. And the best way to create jobs is to have more entrepreneurs, to have more small businesses thriving, because they make up somewhere between 80 and 90% of all jobs in the U.S. So Venture for America is a really cool program because we send recent top college grads from amazing universities who are turning down big law firm and accounting and other kinds of offers to come work with us. And we send them into, we call them rising cities. So cities like Buffalo, New York, or Detroit, or New Orleans, or Oakland, cities that aren't necessarily at the top of people's lists when they graduate college as a high potential college grad. And we have them work with either startups or local businesses. And they are able to go in as kind of a business generalist and do a 2-year rotation where they learn how to run a business. And so they are typically working fairly closely with the CEO or someone else who's high level, and they're able to go in and really learn so much more. Most right out of college kids who get a job are sort of in an assistant level position where they don't do much. They're not adding a ton of value, and they leave that first job without really knowing much about how to actually build a company or to create value. And so what we're able to do is send in 22-year-olds who by the time they leave when they're 24 are like, oh, wow, I just got, a real life MBA and actually know how to build things. I know, so much more about business than I ever would have learned sitting in a massive company as just another name on a roster for years.
Yeah, wow. That program sounds incredible. I mean, what an amazing opportunity to be able to have that access to the CEO, to be able to get visibility into all the different areas of a company. I mean, that's a really incredible program.
Yeah, it's awesome. And then for the local communities, it's great because they're communities that have a really, really, really hard time attracting talent, getting people to move there or even just to stay there after college and work in their communities. So it is a really, really special way to help grow these communities that otherwise are kind of struggling, while also showing students that there is something besides becoming an accountant or banker in New York or joining a big tech company like Google in San Francisco.
Yeah, I mean, what a great service for those communities as well.
Can you talk to us at all about your relationship with Sara Hater? I know she's one of your backers as well, but she also takes a unique perspective to investing now and saying, I'm going to do an active job of investing in more female CEOs.
Yeah, Sarah's awesome. I was actually the first woman that she invested. It was not the first woman she invested in, but I was the first woman she invested in after making that public commitment to focus exclusively on investing in female CEOs and founders. And the reason for that is she was very early at Twitter. She did very well there, so she was in a position where she could angel invest, and so she was doing that. And the reason that she decided to really double down and focus on female-led deals is that she was investing in a lot of female-led deals already, or female-founded deals. There's always so much hesitance and just bias, frankly, against investing in female founders. And she felt like there were just so many founders who were getting passed over when they shouldn't be. And so she decided to do something about that by saying, look, I'm in a position, very well-respected woman in the Valley, where I and say, I'm only going to invest in this kind of founder. It's impactful. I think matters a lot. I think it makes a big difference when you see founders or when you see people willing to say that, because it sort of shifts the conversation from people who say, well, of course I would invest in women. I just can't find enough good ones. And they have to acknowledge that when people like Sara are able to make that commitment and say, I'm still going to be able to, get a good return here, and I'm only going to invest in female founders, that certainly you now have no excuse to invest in zero female founders. And so it's definitely been a really powerful and impactful statement that she's made. I think a lot of other people are kind of more quietly following suit, right? They're just investing in good deals from good founders. And if you're truly looking to back great founders, and you're truly looking to have a wide range of deal flow, and you want to see the best deals, then you're going to find deals from people who aren't 22-year-old white dudes, right? Just because statistically, they make up such a small percentage of society that they certainly can't be responsible for 100% of good deals. And empirically, if you look at both what drives returns in companies, it tends to be diverse teams, specifically female-led teams, but then also diverse teams in general. They outperform non-diverse teams. And then more anecdotally, right, you can look at tons of examples of really, really, really brilliant female founders and CEOs, particularly when it comes to opening up new markets, right? Somebody like the founder of ET, it's a Black couple, right? And they saw something, a man and a woman who saw a massive media opportunity that nobody else did when it came to targeting minority media. Or you look at somebody like an Estee Lauder, who is a woman who said, hey, I'm going to figure out how to sell beauty to women in a different way, right? So there's a lot of these massive iconic companies that were really trailblazers were started by people who weren't the 22-year-old white dude coming out of Stanford.
Absolutely. And it just makes good business sense too. I mean, I think there was a study that just was released recently about female-led businesses being some X percentage more profitable than male CEOs at the helm. So
yeah. Yeah, and then you can also look at things like, Roger Ailes just stepped down from Fox News, and while certainly, women are not saints and they are humans as well, you do find, anecdotally a lot less of your budget goes to defending your CEO from sexual harassment claims when you have a diverse team.
Very, very true.
Yeah, I recently did a episode of the Break It Down show out at the Negro League Museum in Kansas, and one of the things we talked about was the quality of the players that weren't able to get over into the major leagues meant that the lower half of the bench at a minimum was significantly worse in both leagues that, once they integrated. So here we have all these 22-year-old white dudes from Stanford that are getting a lot of deals. That means that the lower half of that population is going to be outperformed by a whole lot of other people. So it's actually a brilliant investment strategy.
Yeah, and it makes a lot of sense. And I think that you're seeing more and more people understand that. And I think that the real goal, right, kind of down the road are companies that are diverse, right? So it's not just if everybody at your company looks like you, then your company is definitely going to miss things, right? There's going to be things you don't see. And so it's really, getting, especially people before they start a company. Once you start a company, it does get incrementally harder because your team is in place. And then you start to have to make some really hard decisions and confront the fact that you built the wrong team, or a team that is going to underperform what it could have. But especially before you start a company, really thinking about how do we think about diversity? How do we bring in the startup world, you'll almost never see a startup that does not have a technical founder. And the reason for that isn't because every business person knows a technical founder and that's just the way it works. It's because there's been sort of this relentless drumbeat from investors saying you need both, right? You need somebody who knows how to build the tech, and you need somebody who knows how to build the business. Because if you only build tech, it's very unlikely you're ever going to be able to make money. If you only know how to build a business, it's very unlikely you're ever going to be able to build the technology to let the business really grow, right? And so because of that insistence, in probably the course of 15 years, the market has completely changed, and now no one would really dream of starting a tech company without having a technical co-founder. And so I think once we start to see more of that insistence in terms of diversity, which is the same thing, I think that we're going to start to see some much stronger companies emerge. Things like e-commerce companies, right? If it's just a male-led company, women impact 80% of purchase decisions, right? Even in categories like men's fragrance, women buy half of the fragrances outright to gift to men or to give to men. And then also, if you're a guy and a girl, even if you barely know her, walks up to you and says, wow, your cologne smells terrible, what are the odds you're ever going to buy that again, right? So, and certainly vice versa. But it's interesting to look at even a category like that where you could say, well, if I'm doing a men's fragrance startup, why do I need a woman? I'm selling to men, but you're actually not.
Right. Yeah, no, the diversity impacts every aspect of the company, from the way the product is built, the way it interacts with you, the marketing messages and positioning that you choose to have. And yeah, having just a one-sided focus is not going to be good for scale, especially when you're marketing to mass market. And that's kind of what you guys are doing too. I mean, your target customer is anyone that wants to get into fitness.
Yep, exactly.
How do you market this so that people who are in your market, I mean, you got 45-year-olds at the end of your market that are going to be out working out. How do you reach them? I mean, if you reach out on Snapchat, you'll get some, but how do you get 45-year-old people to work out with their favorite athlete?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, right? Because a lot of it is, I think 73% of Americans say they want to work out at least twice a week. Less than 20% do. Of that 20% who are working out, that includes, the Johnny Mosleys of the world and your personal trainer and the girl next to you in spin class who's there, 10 times a week, right? So when you actually look at the average American, right, who they're not working out very often. They're working out maybe 5 or 6 times a month at most. So really a lot of it is thinking about how to engage people, how to get them excited, right? Because most people want to work out. They think of themselves as people who do work out, but just haven't gotten around to it for, 6 or 12 years. So how do you get those people engaged? And I think a lot of it is the inspiration. It's showing them there's a fun way to work out. There are people that you already look up to and admire that you get to follow along, and also that it's fun. If you've ever played team sports or watched an episode of Friday Night Lights, right? One of the obvious things is that there's a real sense of fun and camaraderie that goes into the workouts. But then when you think about working out yourself, you're thinking about slaving away at a gym on a treadmill for an hour alone.
Right.
Yes. And so a lot of it, I think, is bringing those two together and saying, actually, no, you know what? It can be really fun to work out. You just have to do it in a way that works for you and inspires you in where you like it. And then I think once you start to see results, it definitely gets a little bit addicting because you're like, oh, wow, I didn't realize my body could do that. I didn't know that I could look this way or move this way. And that gets super exciting for people too.
It will actually be really fun to follow Proday and see some of the success stories that come out and some of the people that have trained with a particular athlete and, hear their results and what's happening to them and their bodies and how they're changing.
A lot of fitness is super predicated around kind of the before and after, lose 1,000 pounds in a day type of thing. That's not our goal. Our goal is less. If you really want to do that to your body, it's not very safe and it's not very enjoyable. But sure, if you have the willpower to spend 2 months working out 5 hours a day and eating nothing but boneless, skinless chicken breasts and salmon, yeah, you can change your body pretty dramatically in a pretty short amount of time, right? But what we really want is much more about building kind of a lifestyle and not crash dieting. If that's something you need to do, there are plenty of resources you can find to find ways that works and you can do it. And that's something you need right now, whatever, right? No one's here to judge, but we're much more focused on making working out a part of your life that you actually like and enjoy, not something that, it's not like a jail sentence, right? Where you say, well, I'll go in right now and I'll be out in 2 months, right? We want you to actually build this into your life as an enjoyable part of your life that you do several times a week. And we know that when that happens, you are going to see some interesting and exciting changes. I've been doing Delanie's workout for a couple of months now because we've had the content, and I never used to do arm workouts. And now I'm like, oh my God, I have biceps,
cool.
Right? And it's funny because it's not what I went into it thinking. I was just like, oh, I'll do the workout because it's my workout. And so it is exciting to see those changes and to see much bigger changes than I've ever gotten when I've said, oh, I'm just going to do some crazy crash diet for 3 weeks.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome.
Yeah, no kidding. Everybody likes biceps.
What I'm curious about the most is maybe if you could talk about some of the challenges you've encountered and along the way in starting Proday and how you've overcome them.
There are always challenges. Sometimes you correctly guess what they will be. Sometimes you don't. A lot of it, I think, is personal to the founder, the company, the market you're in, whatever it is, right? I think when you're starting a startup, a lot of it is the ability to find a way to kind of work through the problem, whatever it may be, and also sometimes find an upside, right? I was really close to making a pretty significant hire a few months back at the beginning of the year when the investor got pretty spooked because of the economy and really pulled back on investing. So I had an investor who their personal portfolio really took a hit. They weren't able to deploy the capital they thought they were. So I couldn't make this hire. And at the time, I was super disappointed. But then what I ended up finding out as time went on is that the thing that I thought I needed to hire a full-time person to do wasn't really a full-time job. And I actually, was able to find a role really around kind of the finance side of things, right? Because we do monetize. We are bringing in revenue as well as investment capital. And what I found was I actually had people in my network who were really good at that, who were interested in helping with some of that stuff on an advisor basis. So I actually didn't need to bring on a full-time hire. And if I had, there's a great person, they probably would have sort of not had much to do, which isn't great, right? So for me, it's also kind of listening to and paying attention to what's going on around you. If I had just completely freaked out when that happened and said, I'm going to do whatever it takes, I'll pay her from my credit card or whatever, something crazy, I really think that would have been a mistake. And instead I said, okay, this is happening. I don't understand why it's happening, but maybe I should take a moment, take a little bit of a step back and think about, is there some upside here? Is there something I can do, something I can learn that will be a positive that I just am not seeing in this situation? And there certainly was. I think that's one of the biggest things is there's always going to be setbacks. A lot of times setbacks are you being upset about something, not realizing that the best possible thing that could happen is for things not to go the way you want them to. If you can so accurately predict the future that you know exactly how every decision should pan out, you should stop doing a startup and you should start buying lottery tickets, right? Because if you could really tell the future, that's a much easier way to make money than you can do whatever you want. I think that there is you have to be a little bit of a control freak to start a startup because you're in charge of everything. But you also have to understand that you can never have 100% information. You can never know everything. And when things aren't working, sometimes that's okay. And you should take a step back and say, maybe why isn't this working? What can I learn from it?
That's just a great attitude to have in general about life's obstacles and how to look at them when they come your way is, how can I make the best of this? What opportunity or lesson lies therein, and just move past it as, quickly as possible. Obviously setbacks are going to get you down, but you have to keep moving forward, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, yeah.
A buddy of mine, Anthony Iannarino, is a speaker, consultant, sales guru. And one of the things he was telling me the other day was when people say, oh my gosh, the economy, you have to square them away, show them your chart and says, look, look at the last 6 years. Each year, the economy is bigger than the rest. The one time when we had a bad year, 2010, it was still the third biggest economy of all time ever created. So when those investors say that, you have to ask them, are you betting on the future that it's crashing, or are you betting on the future that's going up? Because the economy is awesome. It's fine. And they should believe in you because what you're doing is working.
Exactly. And sometimes I think with things like that, right, the weirdest things happen and you just accept that was a near miss, right? If the investor can't fund you, maybe it's going to be for the best and you're going to find out that, you didn't want them to fund you. They weren't going to be the right fit for where your company's going. So yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think that if you don't have faith in the economic engine, right, then it's a scary time to be an investor always. And if you do, and then you have the capital to kind of back it up and to deploy that money, then it's a great time to be in business.
Well, Sara, it's been an awesome conversation, and thank you so much for joining us on Popping the Bubble. And I'm really looking forward to actually trying Proday and getting a good workout from Mr. Delanie Walker here, getting the glute blasting squat challenge going.
Yeah.
That is so hard. I will tell you, it looks like it's not that much. It's like squats. I think it's like you warm up and then you do squats, dumbbell thrusters, kettlebell, something like 3 things. It is so hard. Make sure you warm up well and you will thank me. Yes.
Okay. I'm going to try it. I'll let you know.
I'm excited.
Absolutely. Please
thank
do.
you. I think that wraps it up for us.
Awesome. Cool. Thank you guys.